I feel it would be nice if we could make a coon detector or something, so that at birth gone, as they born the children, they come, we'll just be testing them to know which one is it going to be. I'd probably put a sign or something so that we just know. It will be good because, this way we know who we are looking out for, who we are watching.
This one's gonna get rough, okay? I am here to rebuke the black people who live in 2023, in the 21st century, and talk about slavery constantly as if it happened to you, as if you were on some slave ship somewhere, as if you were on some plantation somewhere, you who hasn't even lived 40 years, you who doesn't even remember what life before the internet looked like, you who lives in the softest, most comfortable age in the history of the human race, you who lives in rich countries with rights and opportunities that most human beings on this earth cannot even fathom, and you spend your life crying daily about slavery as something that had nothing to do with you. Some of you even want free money, right? Somebody should come and give you free money because some person who had nothing to do with you was enslaved in Cuba 400 years ago. Shut up and sit down. I hear this crap all the time. And listen, if any one of you wants to come and deal with me on this one, bring it. I want all the smoke with you. You know who you want, right? You, yeah, slave. Bring it. Shut up and sit down.
It's always the loud ones. And the fact that he chose to do this during Black History Month, like, man, waiting they worry you now. What exactly is your problem?
At what point do we start creating Black-owned mental hospitals to put our coon brothers and sisters in? Because I'm tired. Like, at what point do we actually identify these behaviors as mental illnesses? Like, seriously, at what point do we start to agree that this is delusion, this is mental illness, this is a sickness, psychiatric hospital is needed? Maybe we should start, building up Yaba Left so it becomes more professional in taking care of these people, because these people need to go to Yaba Left. Like, can we step out of these delusions? Are we in Abasa? Like, bro, don't do.
The descendants of enslaved people want free money, you say? During slavery, slave masters amassed mad amounts of wealth using free labor from the enslaved. Then slavery was abolished and the slave masters were richly compensated for losing their slaves. It's 2023 and the descendants of slave masters are still benefiting from slavery. They get to inherit all of that blood money, all of that money that they never worked for. But how dare the descendants of the enslaved ask for reparations for the job that their ancestors did? The Jews got reparation. I've not seen anybody talking about how they got free money. Point number 2. So because we have the internet and light bulb, Black people cannot talk about the systemic issues that are holding them down. Systemic issues that were put in place immediately after slavery. As an African who has taken her time to learn about African American history, videos like this really piss me off. Oh, these people should pick themselves up by the bootstrap. They did that already several times in several places. Vanport, Oregon, Oscarville, Georgia, etc. They freaking had Black Wall Streets. White people could not stand their success. So you know what happened to those cities? They were burnt down, flooded. They are presently under lakes. Same way yesterday, I saw a video of a white South African talking about how he inherited stake in a mine in South Africa, $300 million. They get to keep the profit of the blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors. But when we talk about the effect of colonization and slavery and how they never really ended, oh, it happened a long time ago, shut the fuck up. I think there is a coon factory that produces this type. We got to locate them and burn that shit down. I swear, I cannot stand this level of ignorance and coonery. Folks like this get on my very last nerve.
This one's gonna get rough.
Oh, you're damn right, it's about to.
I am here to rebuke the black people who live in 2023, in the 21st century, and talk about slavery constantly as if it happened to you, as if you were on some slave ship somewhere, as if you were on some plantation somewhere, you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we call a baseball. In the sport of baseball, you have 3 strikes and then you're out. With those three statements, I think we may have just witnessed the quickest at-bat in the history of mankind. Now, if you know me and you know what I do, I could hit you guys over the head for 5 straight minutes on citations of the long-lasting effects of slavery, Jim Crow, debt peonage, the conceptualization of blackness in American society, etc. And if you truly want what you said you want at the end of your video,
if any one of you wants to come and deal with me on this one, bring it. I want all the smoke with you.
then we can set up a time, place, I'll compile the list, and we can get going. But right now, I'm going to focus on the entire premise of your objection. So happy Black History Month, and I am here to rebuke anybody who lives in the year 2023, in the 21st century, and still believes that history doesn't have consequences. Anybody who still refuses to accept the fact that from the millisecond you're conceived, the options you have available to you are determined by things that were outside of your control. Anyone who still clings on to this childish worldview that society's evolution stops with you. Anybody who refused to leave the I wasn't born during the time, thus it doesn't affect me.
You who hasn't even lived 40 years. You who doesn't even remember what life before the internet looked like.
Line of thinking on a blacktop at your local kindergarten. Because if you sincerely believe that a nation in America, being a relatively new nation when compared to nations around the world, being founded with a certain group of people literally being property, their children being born into also being property, this system being so pivotal to this nation that it took the bloodiest war fought on American soil and threats of a whole secession to get rid of the system, only for that system to be reinstated by things like debt peonage, the caste system being upheld by segregation and Jim Crow, the financial opportunity of those people being stripped away through redlining, housing discrimination, exclusions from the GI Bill, exclusions from the Homestead Act, terrorism and hate crimes on Black Wall Street, the educational opportunity being stripped away by misallocation of resources, a property tax system that exists to this day funding public schools when certain people didn't even have property to fund schools with, leading to lower teacher quality, crowded classrooms, school-to-prison pipeline, and lack of preparedness for higher education, the humanity of a group of people being stripped away through incarceration, stereotypes, scientific racism, black codes criminalizing acts only if they were done by black people, a drug war, all of this leading to single-person households, continuing to contribute to the lowered likelihood of attainment for this group of people. And we haven't talked about healthcare, and we haven't talked about voting. Did Martin Luther King Jr. have to be a literal fucking slave to realize the discriminatory effects of past racism and current racism?
Some of you even want free money. Somebody should come and give you free money because some person who had nothing to do with you was enslaved in Cuba 400 years ago.
Reparations is not and should never be free money. But something tells me you have not the faintest clue of anything you just spoke about. The way I view it, we can do one of two things. We can acknowledge our history in order to show how we got here today and as to not repeat it while continuing to better the country we live in. Or we can say, well, at least we got more rights than these guys.
You who lives in rich countries with rights and opportunities that most human beings on this earth cannot even fathom.
As we continue to look like the pure example of the Dunning-Kruger effect. So DM me on Instagram, and if not, do us a favor and
Shut up and sit down. You wants to come and deal with me on this one, bring it. I want all the smoke with you. You know who you want.
I told him I got barbecue smoke, cigarette smoke, chimney smoke. I got the other smoke too. Debate me, Rebuker. Him replied, slavery had nothing to do with you. Get on with your life. Debate is over. No, come back. Don't run. What does it mean for this black man with this British accent to tell me the past don't matter? Let's laugh at him. Ha! Nobody alive today in the British Empire was alive during the Scramble of Africa or even the Middle Passage. Hey, class, can we acknowledge that the British Empire gave away no profits, no artifacts, nothing that they was able to acquire from the Scramble of Africa or during the Middle Passage? No. This man didn't copy and pasted speaking points from supremacists, and he felt like he done said something clever. He tap danced on TikTok for you know who views, and now he feel like he can't. Now come see me. Had the same energy that you had in that video. Can we acknowledge another thing? Why do so many individuals not of European English descent go to England? Because England stole all the resources, therefore the descendants got to go over there to get better jobs and better their life. Now, what does it mean for him to say, the past don't matter, or slavery had nothing to do with you? I saw this little video he made about millennials where he also speak old school speaking points about millennials, right? So I'm gonna assume he's a Gen Xer. And for contextual purposes, Generation X is anyone born from 1965 to 1980. The Scramble of Africa started in 1865, 1914, where a whole bunch of different European countries, including England, started to make a little compromise about what particular African countries they was going to take and make sure they ain't fight each other. That started before he was born. When it comes to the Middle Passage or the Triangle Trade, historically, that predates the Scramble of Africa. Now, when we acknowledge that Britain has uniquely colonized about 90% of the world, and we say that that happened all before his life, wouldn't it be very unreasonable to say that that had nothing to do with him? Research over me search, and please don't back out of this debate beat down now, because what we know is that Walter Rodney, a Guyanese historian and academic, wrote this book about how Europe underdeveloped Africa. And the book was published in 1972. So class, is he gonna look me in my eyes and say consciously, because this book was published before me, it has nothing to do with me, it has nothing to do with you. And Europe underdeveloped Africa, which has a lot to do with slavery and colonization, has nothing to do with neither of us because it happened before we were born. So never mind that both of us are colonized subjects that speak in English because we were colonized subjects from the past that happened before we was born. But we already know your argument, and that's why you're running from this good old school debate beatdown, because you're going to say something about victim mentality, huh? Let's play this little game, though. 1776 is the Declaration of Independence of America. Nobody born today in America had anything to do with that. However, you still recognize that folks still claim their independence and claim what happened then still impact them, right? Tell the British family to return all the stuff they stole from Africa because it has nothing to do with them because it happened before they was born.
I hear this crap all the time. And listen, if any one of you wants to come
And see, I hear this crap all the time too. So let's play. So my name is Dr. Nicole Truesdell. I'm an anthropologist and abolitionist scholar and teacher. Funny enough, I'm actually procrastinating. I got to give a talk tomorrow called The Power of the Story, History as Equity Work. And one thing that I like to make sure that I teach about when I'm speaking about structures and history and how structure manipulates and uses history at all times to kind of create these illusions that the colonial gaze is the only way we can understand what it means to be living and have life. We have to understand the colonial logic, and we have to be able to recognize it when it shows up through anybody. Now, if you take this video that I'm stitching and you don't have an emotional reaction, but you actually take a step back and listen and ask yourself, okay, what is the logic being used to thread this argument through? And does it actually thread itself through in a way that I can follow? Not if I agree, but is there a logic there that I can follow so that I can engage in that as part of the debate? Because this creator put parameters around who they feel can engage in said debates, being over the age of 40 and having access to life before internet, right? So he's asking for, I guess, a grown conversation or a grown-ass conversation, but you need to have a grown-ass argument to have a grown-ass conversation, right? When you use settler logic, that goes out the door, because settler logic via the British colonial project, because you got a British accent, so I have to assume that you're using that kind of lens to take this analysis through. You have to understand that it rendered everything down to its own particular understanding of living in life, which means it rendered everything down through its understanding of history, which means it could only see itself. So this idea that your past doesn't matter doesn't make any sense, because then that crown and monarchy wouldn't matter. If the past doesn't matter, then that means everything that the British monarchy and the British state is built upon is mute, because we only live in the present. You are not where your past, you are only here. And if we're putting the parameters around anybody under 40, then hell, we don't even have technology. Do you see how all of a sudden the colonial logic, when you apply it outside of the small example it wants to keep confined by running away from its historical past of violence and enslavement, when you take that argument and extrapolate it to the larger context of history itself, it falls apart. So what I'm saying this is, y'all, take the step back and listen to the logic. If it's not logicking, ask yourself, then what is parroting? What is being parroted through this person? And if they're asking for a grown-ass conversation, make sure it's a grown-ass argument to begin with before you even bother wasting your breath.
Oh, my dear brother. This was hard for me to watch. And yet this video is pissing a lot of people off, but I'm not pissed. I feel some compassion for you because I was you just 15, 20 years ago, fully indoctrinated into white supremacy and didn't know it. They say it's hard to see the picture if you're inside the frame. And if there's a mile into the woods, there's a mile out of the woods, and you're deep in the woods, my friend. And when that thin veneer that separates us from reality and our indoctrination starts to dissolve away and you start to deconstruct your white supremacy, you're going to be left ashamed, embarrassed, and unable to repair the damage you've done. It'll probably leave you a little bit angry. My response to it has been to put out information for other people like you, like I was, that might cause you not to go there fully. Deuces.
When I see people that look like me behaving like this,